I decided to build my own storage for my Atomos digital recorders. I use an Atomos drive on the camera that I'm looking into now, and I have another one that I use usually on a B camera, and I also have the Atom X Cast that I've been testing as well. And so I need additional drives. Now, of course, they come with caddies, and with the caddy is larger than than the recorder itself, and so it hangs out, and I don't really like that. Most people don't really like that, and that's why the Atom X drives came out, and a couple of companies started producing them early on. Sony was one of them, which they have since discontinued producing those drives, but they're a little expensive. I mean, you're paying for a drive that is a little bit shorter so that it fits in the Atomos, but it's a little bit more expensive, and so that makes it a little bit more challenging to use that drive for other things. Even though they do come in a nice aluminum case and they're pretty sturdy, I primarily just use my 1 terabyte Atom X drive in my Atomos recorders. But in needing additional space, the alternatives are really slim. You either buy drives and put them in the caddy, which means the caddy is going to be hanging out the side of the Atomos, which means it can get caught and it can actually get yanked out. I've heard of that happening to people, and I just don't like having things hanging outside of the device. This is also relatively thicker, and so I don't know, it's just not as practical as a drive that would actually fit the device itself. So when Andesen, a company that makes accessories for cameras, came out with this little caddy here, this is an enclosure that allows you to add your own SSD inside. It takes an mSATA drive and Samsung drives inside of the Samsung T5 drives. Those have an mSATA drive inside of them. And so their deal is you take apart your Samsung drive, you take the drive out of that, and you put it into the Andesen enclosure. Now, I didn't really want to take apart any of my T5 drives. I have a few of them. They're not what I commonly use so much anymore because I'm using the SanDisk drives that are quite a bit faster. And they're more like the T7 drives that Samsung has out now. But you need an mSATA drive for the Andesen, which is an interesting choice, but it is what they're using. And you can pull one of those out of your Samsung T5 drive. I didn't want to tear apart one, so I went online and I ordered a mSATA just SSD by itself, and went and installed it in the Andesen enclosure. Now, Andesen on their website and any documentation says that they haven't tested it with anything else other than the Samsung mSATA drives, and so I thought, well, it's got to work. I mean, I've put lots of different SSDs, NVMe drives in different computers and different machines over the years, and there hasn't been a problem. So it should not be a problem. So I went ahead and ordered one and installed it, and you're watching me install it right now. But there's some caveats. There's some things that are pros and cons, really, to using something else other than the Samsung drive that they recommend. The number one thing is the price. The Samsung T5 drives, because they're older, are cheap, and you generally can find those drives cheaper than you can find a mSATA drive by itself. The only mSATA drive that I was able to find on Amazon was from some company called Dogfish, which I'd heard of before, but I'd never ordered anything from them. And so I thought I'd give it a try, and I ordered one, and it works. I mean, I put the mSATA SSD in the enclosure, put it right into the Atomos and formatted it, and it works. I've been using this for quite a while, probably like the last 5 or 6 videos that I've recorded across and published across a couple of different YouTube channels here have been recorded on this drive. It doesn't have any issues with overheating. It actually stays cooler than the Atom X drive that I typically use, that I'm using right now to record on because I wanted to be able to show you this in the video. So the Atom X drive that I've been using for years now gets a little bit warmer than this, and then of course the Atomos caddy itself, which is plastic, doesn't do a good job at all of dissipating heat, and so the drive inside of it gets a little warm. Not terrible, but if you do record for a long period of time, then it starts to get pretty warm, and it's inside of a plastic enclosure because there's no way for the heat to dissipate. On the Andesen drive, it actually comes with thermal pads that you put in there so that the heat is dissipated from the drive itself into the body of the enclosure. And the body of the enclosure is all aluminum all the way around, and there's plenty of space here for the heat to dissipate. And then, of course, the Atomos devices themselves have fans that kick out the back to assist with cooling of the drives. Even though I don't know if this is a pro or con yet, not, because it's wintertime and I haven't gone out and filmed in the summer, but the fans that exit out the back of the Atomos recorders actually miss this drive now. And so I noticed that the fan on my Atomos is not going on as much because when it does go on, the heat is able to dissipate out the back as well, and it's not just blowing into the back of the SSD that is in there for your storage. So I don't know if the Atomos has better heat dissipation now because I have this really short drive in there, or not. It's one of those things where when summertime comes and I'm out shooting in hotter temperatures, I'll be able to tell. But shooting indoors and it's cool in the room, it's not a problem. And of course, going outside and it's like 5 degrees outside right now, I'm not going to have an issue with fans. So testing in hotter climates is something I'll have to do when hotter climates come. So the price is maybe not as conducive if you are going to buy this enclosure and buy a mSATA SSD, unless you could find a good price on mSATA SSDs, which I was able to find for 1 terabyte, but if you jump up to 2 terabytes, which is what I put in here, then it gets a little bit more expensive. So if you could find a good price on an mSATA SSD, then just go ahead and buy it and put it in this enclosure. I did speed tests, and while this Dogfish brand mSATA drive was a little bit slower than the Samsung drives, it still was more than fast enough for everything that I'm doing, shooting 4K, 4K 60, 4K 120, no problems there. I'm not really doing any raw recording, and so I'm not sending massive files out, but I know that the read and write speeds are fast enough to accomplish that. It's just a hair slower than when I test read and write speeds on my T5 drive. And also there is a Samsung 1 terabyte Evo drive in this caddy, and it's just a little bit faster than the Andesen, and same goes for the Atomos drive that is currently in the Atomos recorder that I'm looking into now. So pros and cons, I think. Really, the pros are it's small, it's very durable. I'm not worried about this falling and hitting the ground. This device here, I think, will withstand a lot more of a beating than this plastic caddy. And the Atomos drive that I have in there now also has an aluminum frame and is definitely much more sturdy than the plastic caddy, but it's still larger. I mean, something like this is not going to bend if it ended up getting some pressure applied to it. This is going to be much stronger than an Atomos drive. I like the fact that it is as short as it is, allowing the fans to dissipate a little bit more heat out of the back of the Atomos, because fan noise is a major issue on the Atomos for me. It's something I've actually complained about to Atomos, and they say it's just the way that it is, as it is with most devices. They need to cool, and so if the sound of the fan is an issue, you got to get it further away from your microphone or your audio source, which is frustrating. So the cons, I would say, just are that the read and write speeds are a little bit slower on this than anything else. I did not test this by taking apart a Samsung drive and putting it inside, so I don't know if that would have improved read and write speeds a little bit. I've shown you some screenshots of what that looks like. Of course, that is using a computer to test the read and write speeds. I have not had any issues while recording on the Atomos when recording 4K 60p to it, 120. I mean, it just hasn't been a problem. I have the Ninja V Plus or V Plus, and then I also have the standard Ninja V. I've tested on both of them. Not had a problem there with either of the devices. So I think it's a good alternative to spending a bunch of money on the Atomos drives that are only available really from one company. And so if you're looking for a larger storage like 2 terabytes, Probably if I had to do this again, I would just order a Samsung drive and take it apart and get the drive out of it because the price is so good. I've got links to all the parts that I use down below, to the Andesen enclosure, to the Samsung drive itself, as well as the SSD, the mSATA SSD that I ended up using and testing in this enclosure. So if you have any questions, ask down in the comment section below. I have some more Atomos content coming up, as I'm going to be reviewing and comparing the Atomos Cast to the Atom Mini Pro from Blackmagic, as well as talking a little bit more about how I'm using the Plus with the FX3 and all that good stuff. So make sure to subscribe to the channel to be notified when I put out new videos. And like I said, any questions, comment section below. Parts list are in the description, and I hope to see you back in another video soon. Take care.